And something I also learned from your book, Rosalind, was the mistreatment of the Palestinian Jews. Like, that's the thing I don't think people understand. Like, there are indigenous Jews, Muslims, and Christians that were from that area, and those Jews were not treated as the Euro Jews.
Because they weren't.
Right.
But, one of my co-editors, there are three of us who edited this book, A Land with the People, is Esther Farmer. Esther's father and grandmother were Palestinian Jews. They were originally from Hebron. Her grandmother used to tell her, we lived here together, all of us. Muslims, Christians, Jews, they were my neighbors. It was the British who started this animosity, starting, with the Balfour Declaration. And, Esther herself, just grew up in this, what to me is a remarkable family of left-wing Jews who were Palestinians and had to leave. And we have other members in JVP, many Mizrahim, who come and have many stories. Some of those stories are in our book.
They're treated as lesser. Like indigenous peoples in general are treated as lesser. The religion is the secondary aspect to this. They were Black and indigenous, dark and indigenous.
That's why.
Or from the East.
Jen, when you talk about, you weren't taught any of this. I mean, I'll say I wasn't taught all that much about the extermination of indigenous peoples in this country.
No.
And,
right.
And these are absolutely connected. I mean, Rosalind talked about settlers. This is a settler colonial enterprise. And, if you're going to be a liberal and stand with Native peoples in this country and around the world, then you have to stand with Palestinians. Otherwise, you're guilty of hypocrisy, and vice versa. By the way, those who stand with Palestinians need to make those connections as well. It is a global movement, a liberation movement, as Rosalind was saying. So we need to be able to connect those dots and say, this is settler colonialism. This is a pattern of behavior of locating a place for a group of people to move into and claim that space in the name of that group of people. They all maybe differ in the details, but that's the basic approach of settler colonialism, and we need to identify it, very, very clearly.
Yeah.
We're speaking with Rabbi Brant Rosen and Rosalind Pachetsky. I think this would be a good opportunity to talk, as we had discussed pretty briefly with the Rabbi before, Rosalind. For those who may or may not know, you may not know, Rosalind, that Jen ran for Congress in 2020 against one of the most notorious Zionists in all of politics, Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Right.
She is somebody who...
That's my congresswoman.
So when it comes to... when it comes to the specific issues pertaining to, most people on the national level know Debbie for her notorious behavior as the DNC chair during the 2016
No,
election.
I assure you, they know her as AIPAC's darling.
But she is definitely somebody who has never met a war she didn't like and has never met an anti-BDS legislation piece that she didn't like. What is the motivating factor for people like Debbie? Because as we alluded to earlier, obviously the detriment of seeing Bibi get back into the prime minister role in Israel, I still think that most of what we do see, much like colonial settlerism, or settler colonialism, whatever the technical term would be. Apologies for my lack of linguism.
You're just a hot mess.
Yeah, I know. I'm just all over the place right now. But the motivation for the majority of these individuals is always money and power. Whatever industry they could get their hands on it in, I believe, it isn't about what religion you subscribe to. It isn't about whether you believe the Jews are the chosen people, blah, blah, blah. It's seizing on an opportunity that is going to make you very wealthy and very powerful. I believe that is Debbie's motivation more than anything else, as it is for a lot of other people in politics. She happens to be one of the most notorious. Do you see it in the same light, both of you?
Absolutely. I mean, I see what we call Zionist organizations with a powerful machinery. I see it on college campuses a lot and universities. where the presence of these organizations inside and out has had a terrible impact on trying to, or at least attempt to silence faculty members and students and organizations and programs that support justice for Palestine. It's vicious because it's unrelenting. They have tremendous amount of money, just as they do to funnel resources to campaigns, local campaigns, as well as state and national campaigns. And it's a political machine. And I think that's how we should see it. It's a political machine, and it happens to be very powerful. And people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz don't want to lose that cash cow. They don't want to lose that source of funding because they don't have an alternative one. They haven't built another base.
Yeah, that's what I say. If she didn't take, the truth is we always say that if she didn't take corporate money, she wouldn't have any money. It's not like she's going to get a bunch of small dollar donors that go, oh, hey, I want to go give my hard-earned dollar to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. No one's doing that.
But Rosalind, how much of that, granted, the demographics in our congressional district actually did change in a very unique way in this previous redistricting cycle.
We lost a whole chunk of Jews. We lost Aventura. She lost Aventura from her district.
Which is that's a pretty big deal.
She's going to take a hit on that.
But there's still a significant Jewish population in the towns of Plantation, in the towns of Cooper City, in the town of Weston. And the thing that's unique about these three particular communities is not just that they are Jewish, they are in many cases fairly affluent Jewish. And I do think that there is something to be said for catering to a very specific crowd that live comfortable lives, and they can focus on these particular issues that really have no bearing on their day-to-day lives, if we're being honest. But it is what you would call, in many ways, the suburban liberals' pet project.
It's a privileged position.
It's a pet project that they get involved in. And I think one thing that has worked, especially because the demographic in this particular part of the country tends to skew older, is the fear tactics tend to work very effectively. Maybe not as
the
much,
older people.
Yeah, maybe not as much as they used to, but it's still very powerful, even though the younger generations are having no part of this.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a political theorist, and I think it's really important not to discount, although, I'm an old Marxist, so I definitely believe in class politics. Sure. But I think it's important not to discount the power of ideology and culture. And I think part of what happens here is that there's a tribalism, and it's not related to being Jewish, but a tribalism around feeling comfortable and feeling that this is your home and your base and your people who are going to support you. And you've always been there with them, and they've always been there with you. And there's a fear of being cast out. There's a fear of being ostracized. And it takes a lot of courage to turn against those constituencies that have always been there in your background. So I think it's complicated. I think it's complicated. And we have to look at those psychological and cultural dimensions of it, because they're part of what is the politics, besides the money. And the money is crucial, but these other things are too. To be called a self-hating Jew, to be called a Jewish anti-Semite, to be called an anti-Semite in this country is just, it's like the worst thing. And our job is to teach people that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are not the same, and to show the difference and the distinction between them. Zionism is adherence and obeisance to a particular state and a particular form of ethno-nationalism. It's different from religion and Jewishness and adherence to a set of ethics and beliefs and traditions. And it's so hard to get people to understand that.
The Zionists did a very good job.
Yeah.
They really did.
One thing I think that might start to change the narrative, and I hate to say it because it's tragically so, is that we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism in North America and around the world, and it's almost exclusively, white nationalist anti-Semitism, of that variety. And we're only going to see more of it. I hate to say it. I shudder to think of another synagogue being shut up the way Tree of Life was, but these are the times in which we live, and it's going to be harder and harder to keep blaming this on Palestinians. I think the rise of white supremacy is becoming very, very alarming to even mainstream liberal folk, and I think it may help change the narrative that using Palestinians and Israel-Palestine in general as a wedge issue to use those fear tactics, I think may be less and less effective in the near future.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.